today's presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. Please look at the side of your screen. And during tonight's presentation, we're going to be collecting questions. I'm going to be introducing you to some wonderful members of our team who are going to walk you through a really great presentation of photography and information about traveling to Antarctica with Lindblad National Geographic. And if during the presentation you have any questions, please look at the right side of your screen where you can type in your message and post your question. And we will pick up the questions, and we've reserved some time at the end of the presentation to answer as many as possible. So we will take as much time, and if we don't get to your question this evening, we will be sure to offer us an email where you can contact one of our expedition specialists tomorrow to follow up. So first of all, just a couple really quick pieces of information as we begin is Lindblad. You're going to hear tonight about Lindblad National Geographic's partnership, but also Lindblad's history in the region of Antarctica. We have quite a long and rich history of experience there. So we're very pleased that you joined us this evening to learn about why it is a great experience and the difference of traveling with Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic. We do have a special savings opportunity for 2012, so we'll remind you at the end of the presentation. But if you have space in your travel schedule for November, we are offering a special air credit plus a 2-day extension in Buenos Aires for our November 27th departure of our 14-day Antarctica voyage. So just make mental note of that, and we'll be back to that at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, we'll move ahead with just another quick couple pieces of information. You're going to hear tonight about our history, and as I said, Lars-Erik Lindblad is he is the pioneer of not only Lindblad travel, which led into the company Lindblad Expeditions that you know today, but he also was a pioneer in Antarctic tourism. And in 1966, he led the first group of expedition travelers, which is non-scientific travelers, to Antarctica. So really big moments in the history of Lindblad. We're very proud of that heritage. And on our next slide, you'll see there's Sven Olof Lindblad, Lars-Erik's son, who is the leader of Lindblad Expeditions today. So he continues the tradition and has been working himself in taking people to Antarctica for almost 40 years. So the Lindblad legacy runs very, very deep. And our partnership with National Geographic is a very important part of what you're going to hear tonight, because when you travel with Lindblad Expeditions to Antarctica, you get the benefit of two very special organizations, Lindblad and the National Geographic Society, with whom we're partnered for all of our expedition travel. And in light of the partnership with Lindblad and National Geographic, you're also going to learn tonight about a very special expedition ship, the world's finest expedition ship, in fact, which is the National Geographic Explorer. And you're going to hear from our staff members tonight. We have Lindblad naturalist, Dr. Steve McLean, who's going to be speaking to us, and Kim Hecox, who's National Geographic photographer and writer. So we're pleased they're going to give you two complementary and very different perspectives so that you can learn about both photography and the adventure and wildlife side of our Antarctica expeditions. But the ship is very much part of that story as well, and we're very proud of the ship and happy to tell you a little bit about how it enhances your experience when you do travel with us. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce you to two members of what we call the best ice team on Earth. And as I said, we've got Dr. Steve McLean and Kim Hecox. So with both of you on the phone tonight, I'm going to go ahead and pass everything over. We'll start with Steve, I guess, and then you guys can take us through the rest of the presentation, and I'll come back later to help with the Q&A. So Steve, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, and greetings to all the, I see we just gone over 200 people out there. I'm pleased to see your interest in Antarctica. Why Antarctica? Well, I can assure you that your friends and your family will be asking you the same thing. Why would you want to go to Antarctica? It is simply, well, as the title of this webinar, the most exhilarating adventure the planet offers, and that is, in fact, very accurate. It is wild, it is untrammeled, it is rich in wildlife, and it is incredibly rich in scenic beauty. You can clearly see here in this photograph the ice-covered mountains. People go for the wildlife, and the wildlife is fascinating, but I have to warn you, it is the ice that gets into your system, and you will go away dreaming about ice in Antarctica. It's a wild and wonderful place to visit, and I'm really pleased that you're giving it serious thought. Satellite composite image of Antarctica. It is the most remote continent, almost entirely covered by ice. You may have heard it is the coldest, windiest, etc. But I want to emphasize that the part of Antarctica that we visit is that piece sticking up into the upper left-hand corner of the dark blue insert. This is the Antarctic Peninsula. It is the place where Antarctica is closest to South America. It's 2 nights and a day leaving Ushuaia, crossing Drake's Passage to get down to the Antarctic Peninsula. So what you see here, here's the peninsula sticking up. That little row of white dots just to the north of the peninsula, the South Shetland Islands. On the west side, we have the Bellinghausen Sea, and on the right-hand or east side, we have the Weddell Sea. So this is the area in which we concentrate our activities. I indicated ice. We have sea ice that is frozen ocean, some of which persists throughout the season. We have ice on the continent, and we have large pieces of glacial ice breaking off of the continent and floating in the water. These serve as platforms for seals. So this person is standing there on the edge of sea ice, looking out over open water, across glacial ice, across to the continent, and looking at a group of seals hauled out on a floating piece of sea ice. One advantage, I really haven't thought about the value of this, but for those of us that live in the north, long about December, January, admit it, we're getting awfully tired of the dark. You go down, you leave the Arctic or the high latitude winter, go down to Antarctica where the season is reversed, and you find yourself with long, long days, and that hit of light has a tremendous effect on your psyche, helping you to get through the rest of the winter. So the long days, beautiful low light in the evening. I mentioned the ice. Here's a shot of Ernest Henry Shackleton's vessel, the Endurance, stuck in the ice. But we're not going in a ship like Endurance. We're going in the National Geographic Explorer, the most wonderful ice-strengthened platform for expedition cruising afloat. So you don't have to worry about getting stuck in the ice. You get to sit and watch the ice go by. Here are a group of penguins standing on glacial ice. Yes, it really is that blue. I'm not going to try to tell you why now. You'll just have to come on the ship and we'll tell you about it. But the ice really grabs you. It is incredibly beautiful. You will take more pictures than you had ever dreamed. You'll want to bring your camera and bring plenty of recording medium so to capture the ice. Also the wildlife. Here an Adelie penguin greeting a group of expedition travelers walking over the snow. The rule is that we may not approach wildlife to less than 15 feet. The wildlife, however, are not bound by the same rule. So if you simply sit quietly with your camera or without, as you choose, if a penguin walks up to you, as they often do, that's perfectly okay. Here are Adelie penguins leaping off the water, chinstrap penguins making a landing at Baliad, Adelie penguins perched on the ice. They're amazing, remarkable little beasts. Seals, we've got a crab-eater seal up in the upper left, a Weddell seal, a lower left, and an elephant seal up in the upper right. The wildlife here, because they've never been exposed to land-based predators, are very unafraid and allow us close approach. Here is cue the ominous music. There is the leopard seal. It's been lying on the ice here. These are predators on the penguins. If you choose an expedition that includes South Georgia, you, particularly in the early part of the season, you would encounter these fellows. Massive, the largest of all of the pinnipeds, that is the largest of all the seals and their allies, bigger than walrus by far. These are a couple of bull southern elephant seals battling for primacy on a beach in South Georgia. With control of the beach comes the right to breed with any female who hauls up on his chunk of beach. Whales. Whales are seen on virtually every trip. Whales this is a humpback whale breaching for us with a piece of glacial ice floating in the water behind. Whales that go up for the Antarctic winter into the more tropical waters come down to feed in the highly productive food-rich waters around Antarctica. So you get a chance to see and photograph whales, or even these. These are Antarctic killer whales. I happen to be there. I have a similar shot of my own, but this one was taken by our director of photography, Ralph Lee Hopkins. 3 killer whales spy hopping, checking out the seal on the ice. They found it to be a leopard seal, and that not to be liking. The seal was happy when the orca or killer whale swam away in search of another prey. Here we have a whale leaping over the top of our expedition ship, the Explorer. Well, actually, that's a little bit of a camera trick. This is a humpback whale leaping with the Explorer in the background. It brings out all kinds of behavior in us. It's just such an exhilarating place where you can revert to childhood if you want, lying on the snow making snow angels with nobody else to tromp over your snow angel. It'll be there until it's covered by the next season's snow. I did talk about exhilarating behavior. You can do this. This is what we call the polar plunge. Some of you may have done it in the Arctic. You'll have a chance. That, in fact, that is slush ice into which this person is jumping. I can assure you they will survive. They will come up gasping, giggling, laughing, screaming, and gives you something to tell your friends about. How many people do you know that have been leaping into the waters of the polar sea? You might note the Zodiacs pulled up against the entrance to the ship there. Look where the ship has parked. Our captain's extremely knowledgeable, experienced, skillful, able to bring the ship right up next to the land. So our Zodiac ride to land was all of about 60 yards. This is a place called Nico Harbor. It's on the Antarctic Peninsula. That's Anvord Bay in the background. So the point is, virtually every day on a cruise, you kind of go around looking. On an expedition, you land, you come ashore, and virtually every day we will have you coming ashore, walking, visiting penguin colonies, walking over the snow, perhaps even walking over the sea ice. Kim, you want to tell them a little bit about South Georgia?
All right, thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you this evening. This is Kim speaking to you from Gustavus, Alaska. And South Georgia is, just imagine, if you can, a crescent-shaped island about 120 miles long, about 20 miles wide at its widest, shaped like a crescent moon deep in the South Atlantic, about 600 miles east-southeast of the Falkland Islands off of the South American coast. And it's as if you took a slice of Switzerland and placed it in the middle of the deep South Atlantic and then filled it with magnificent wildlife. It's sub-Antarctic. It doesn't have as much ice as the peninsula, like Steve was telling us, but it has tremendous glaciers, has a lot more greenery, and it has outrageous numbers of birds and mammals, predominantly penguins and seals. these king penguins, and magnificent 3-foot-tall king penguins, close relatives of the emperor penguins that you saw on March of the Penguins. All around us, colonies with 1 in 200,000 birds. It's stunning, really, to step ashore and have a 2-mile-long beach and just to walk among these animals. Really, it's the Africa of Antarctica, the island of South Georgia. Just to have a 3, 2, 3, 4, 5-hour-long landing. Some landings are pre-sunrise. We'll land as the sun comes up to get the best pictures, go back on the ship, which is optional if you want breakfast, take you back ashore on these magnificent boats called Zodiacs, inflatable boats, and gather up at some of the historic sites. And Steve, I think I'd like to hand it back to you, actually, because you do such a beautiful, Steve gives such a great toast at the gravesite of Sir Ernest Shackleton.
There we are, down in the lower left. That, in fact, is the burial place of Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton. He died not on the voyage of Endurance, but on a subsequent voyage, the voyage of the Quest. And at his wife's suggestion, he was buried in the whalers' graveyard at South Georgia. Let me tell you one thing about South Georgia. Guests frequently ask the natural history staff, well, what's your favorite trip? And we get a little cagey. We don't like to answer that outright. But the question was phrased, if you only had one more trip to take, where would you go? And the question was posed to a group of naturalists, and around the table, pretty much everyone said, South Georgia, South Georgia. We would go to South Georgia. It's quite an amazing place. Looking much like it did when Shackleton was here, a picture taken by Frank Hurley looking down into the bay. We don't usually climb up this high on our hikes. Those of you who are a little concerned, don't expect to be asked to climb up to this height, but it just points out some of the rich history, the whaling history and the exploration history. The Falkland Islands, between South America and South Georgia. Been getting a lot of press in recent years, recent time, hasn't it? In the conflict between Argentina and Britain over sovereignty. But it is a place that conflict doesn't affect our visit in any way. It's a place that's incredibly rich in wildlife, such as the rockhopper penguin that you see up in the upper right. That bird down on the lower right is actually a wandering albatross from South Georgia. If you can imagine visiting and photographing a bird with an 11-foot wingspan, tip to tip, it is the longest wingspan of any flying bird, and it's just a wonderful, a very powerful experience for me to visit and photograph the birds as we do on South Georgia. The church at Falkland Islands. Look at that handsome arch. Those are actually jawbones of blue whales. There was formerly whaling going on. This is in Stanley, the one might call it capital city, but with fewer than 2,000 people, it's certainly hardly a city, but it is the capital of the Falkland Islands. People have lived here for many hundreds of years. They are fiercely, very, very British, I assure you. And we get a chance to walk about and meet some of the locals. They're very friendly, very happy to see us, very happy to tell us a little bit about their lives in the Falkland Islands. Our ship, we think of it as our platform for exploration. Let me again distinguish between a cruise and an expedition. In an expedition, we don't have a really firm, fixed itinerary. We go where conditions are most favorable. We start off with a plan, and the plan often gives us something from which to deviate. Deviation based upon changes in the weather, the wind direction, ice conditions. So here, early in the season, you see this wonderful ship, the National Geographic Explorer, and the captain has actually taken the ship into shore-fast sea ice, parked the ship in the ice. We've gotten off the ship, and we're actually walking over Antarctic sea ice, which is a really a fun experience. The ship, we acquired it a few years ago and completely refit the ship. Everything interior on the ship has been redone. The cabins are magnificent, all of them recently redone. We put additional steel reinforcement around the waterline, allowing us to go into the ice. She is fully stabilized, which gives her smooth passage. And that's important as we're coming down. Let me talk just briefly about the Drake Passage. You've probably all heard about it. This is the passage of water in the Southern Ocean between the southern tip of South America and the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. And many of you know that this, during the age of sail, was one of the most notorious bodies of water on the planet. Is it as bad as you have heard? Well, not in a ship like this. It's very different from a sailing ship. Sometimes a storm comes through, and when that happens, the water can be a little bit bumpy. Often, we will go across, and it will be what we call the Drake Lake. It will be smooth with very little motion at all. Sometimes there is motion. There's no way we can predict months ahead of time or even weeks ahead of time when that will be. If you happen to go through coincident with a storm, the water will be a little bit bumpy. But the ship handles it beautifully. The stabilizers take a great deal of the motion out of the water. And I promise you, once you get there, you pass through the South Shetland Islands into the smoother water around the peninsula, and you'll say, aha, it was worth it. I guarantee you it's worth it. Even when the Drake throws its worst at us, the reward is well worth the experience. On the bottom, you see a shot of the hull going through the sea ice. Zodiacs. This is our way of getting from the ship to the shore or cruising about, looking at wildlife. Kim, do you want to tell them a little bit about Zodiacs?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. Well, the Zodiacs are one more remarkable element of the overall operation that are so essential and help it all come together beautifully, really. This fleet of 10 inflatable boats, each with a quiet 4-stroke outboard on the back of each for good power and for quiet. And we take you ashore in these Zodiacs and land you on shore, or we might just cruise through the ice. We might come upon whales, Paul Nicklin photographing a humpback whale with the long pectoral flippers. Use the Zodiac as a platform for photography. So they are remarkable shuttlecraft, but they're also great little touring vessels too. They're inflatable, but they have 7 separate compartments. If one happens to be punctured, which I've never experienced, it's so rare, it's still very floatable. So they're safe. Safety is always a primary concern. We bring you ashore, and you move up towards the bow of the boat, you swing your legs into shallow water, step ashore. We're there to assist you, to take your arms and bring you safely ashore where you'll be for the next, 30 minutes to 4 hours. If you want to go back early, you can. We're there for you. And so the Zodiacs are wonderful for getting ashore, but also for just Zodiac cruising. Most often, your naturalists will be your drivers, so they can speak to you about natural history as you're out among the scenery and the ice. Shut down the engine, just listen for a while to the ice speaking, the snap, crackle, and pop of all the glacial ice around us. And then on top of the Zodiacs, there's also a fleet of kayaks. You can go kayaking. We find perfect conditions. End up paddling right by these Gentoo penguins, porpoising by going ashore in the breeding colonies. And the kayaks, you sit upon them. You don't sit in them. The loading platform is really easy to work with. You step upon this platform that's suspended between 2 Zodiacs. It's just a metal platform slightly below the waterline. You're in your rubber boots. You sit on the kayak. You've been given a briefing in the lounge prior to getting in your kayak. give in your paddles, and there you go for the next hour, hour and 15 minutes. You're out in the tremendous quiet and beauty, the silence sometimes. You feel like it can stretch all the way to Australia. It's so profound. Just beauty and magnificence all around you. And then another element, it's one thing after another, really. It's so remarkable, is the undersea program. While we are ashore, some of us might be ashore at a landing, others might be touring in a Zodiac. Our undersea specialist, who's part of the natural history staff, it's a large natural history staff, 8 to 10 of them, plus the National Geographic photographer. And some of the natural history staff, I should add, are qualified Lindblad photo instructors. Anyway, this undersea specialist dives, and certified divers, sometimes with other certified divers that are the baker or other members of the crew. And they shoot video of remarkable, mostly invertebrate creatures, marine invertebrate creatures in Antarctica, some fishes as well. Maybe a seal will swim by. They'll get great images of that. And then this program uses an ROV, a remote-operated vehicle, to shoot deep. And the images are startling. We look at them at recap, the recapitulation at the end of each day, the hour before dinner, in the lounge. It's a beautiful lounge. We all gather. We have drinks. We have snacks. The naturalists speak to us in these wonderful little 5- and 7-minute snippets of natural history with humor and brevity and lots of humanity. Really wonderful people to share your time with. The photography program, introduced not that many years ago, really, in great earnest, always growing. Of course, since 2004, when Lindblad teamed up with National Geographic, which sort of a hallmark of National Geographic is photography. And the Lindblad staff, what's great about this whole thing is there's so much passion. When's the last time you were surrounded by passionate people everywhere doing what they're most passionate about? And rooms filled with people brimming with gratitude. It's life-changing. So we explore creativity, and creativity is so important in our world today, and photography is a great venue for that. We look at our images, we download them into kiosks that are available on the ship for reviewing your images. A lot of people bring their laptop computers. We have photo galleries some evenings. People can share their images, be critiqued by the staff members. You can improve your photo skills, and from all ranges of cameras, from point and shoots, which we call aim and creates, all the way up to single lens reflex Canons and Nikons, and even if you shoot video. We have people that can break out and help you with your video, breakout groups and instructive groups, and always available on shore for questions, always open to your questions, and getting down on our bellies and on our knees to get close to the animals, to really talk about composition and discovery, and why don't you try this, or let's try this. And I remember once I was just photographing Antarctic terns in flight with 3 women who had never photographed birds in flight before, and they got the best images. They couldn't believe the images they got. It was profound for them. So all in all, what happens through this whole thing is it's a sense of wonder. It's this, like Steve said earlier so well, it's becoming a kid again, and just joyously embracing each day, because basically I think Antarctica is what the world was. And so we're able to step back into a time like the first day of creation, or into the Ice Age. A day in Antarctica is more memorable, I would guess, than an entire year elsewhere. You will remember a day in Antarctica doing whatever you're doing, kayaking, hiking, walking, strolling the beach, just sitting on the beach, watching penguins go by, or out in the kayak, going by a Weddell seal or a crab-eater seal, a leopard seal. They're quite docile on the ice. They're very relaxed. Sometimes they'll open their mouths and rear their heads up, and it's very dramatic for photography. So it's all the adventure without the adversity, I like to say. unlike the Antarctic explorers of 100 years ago. And what befell those guys and the remarkable stories of them surviving. This is when you come back to the ship, there's hot chocolate waiting for you and a great meal. Hikes of all kinds, longer hikes for more exercise. If that's what you're interested in, going up maybe 200, 300, 400 feet to look down on the scenery and the colonies of penguins, or just strolling along the shore and having a staff member with you there to talk about the geology or the whaling history or the penguin breeding biology. So you just get to be a kid again and gather up each day. You make new friends, and it is altogether a remarkable, stunning experience. And what's cool about it is that this whole industry, this expedition cruising, was invented by the Lindblad family. And so I think they're always looking for ways to do something that nobody else is doing, to give the very best experience possible. One way you can take that experience home is another member of the staff on board every one of these trips is a video chronicler. And that person's job is to go along with this very good camera and just photograph the daily activities and quietly be working among the staff, getting narration from the staff every so often and an exhilarating statement from a guest that is then compiled every day, edited, fused together with nice music, and at the end of the trip, made available to you as you leave the ship, is this video chronicle of 45 to, let's say, 50 minutes long, slightly longer for the longer trips if you go to South Georgia and the Falklands, that you can then purchase. It's not very expensive, and walk off the ship with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies of this. And when you get home, people ask you, how was Antarctica? Just say, come over here and sit down for a minute, take a look at this. It'll blow their minds. So a great experience. I just feel honored to be a part of the whole thing. So I think, Steve, how about if I hand it back to you now?
Okay. Here's a picture I wish I'd taken. But here's a picture that every one of you could take. You're out Zodiac cruising. You see the opportunity. You ask your driver to position the Zodiac so you can get the ship, the mountain, the reflection. Sure, we'll do that for you. We can do that. So there is our ship, the National Geographic Explorer. We keep calling it a platform for exploration. It's much more than a ship. As I said, we've completely revamped all of the cabins. Inside here, the ship has multiple observation areas. Here are people standing up on the foredeck on a nice, clear, blue sky day. Incidentally, before I forget, blue sky day means one of the things you want to pack to bring with you is sunscreen. People often don't think about that going to Antarctica, but the days are long and the sun is bright, and you get reflection off of the snow. So bring your sunscreen, stand out on the bow, taking pictures. Here's only one of the cabins. This particular cabin is a very nice one with a sitting area and a balcony. Some of you are saying, balcony, what do you need a balcony in Antarctica for? But many is the time I've had somebody come up and say, well, did you see that whale? Or did you see those whales? Well, I guess not. Well, they were right outside my cabin. I stepped out on the balcony for to greet the morning sun, and there were whales next to the ship. They're very comfortable rooms. Every single room has its own head, that is its own bathroom, shower. We have no shared facilities down the hall. Every room has its own. Some of them have 2 beds, as you see here. Others have queen beds. They're really extremely comfortable. Just because it's an expedition doesn't mean you have to live like it. They are extremely comfortable. We have a wonderful observation lounge where you can look out and watch Antarctica go by. The bridge, the navigation bridge, that's where the officers do their work. That's that row of windows up there. But you know what? you are always welcome to join us in the bridge to watch the officers at work, or it's kind of the nerve center of the ship. We're there early in the morning looking for wildlife whenever the ship is underway. We have an open bridge policy, and guests are always welcome to join us on the bridge. We have a library and observation lounge kind of up on the top deck. What a place to sit with, as you see, a massive amount of glass. What a place to sit and watch Antarctica go by. Dining. Again, just because it's an expedition doesn't mean you're going to eat pemmican and hardtack. We have wonderful cuisine served the main dining room in the upper right here. We have a somewhat more casual dining area we call the bistro bar in the lower left. And then in an area we call the chart room. During the day it's an observation area, but each evening the table is set for 16 diners, and it gives you a chance to share a meal perhaps with the National Geographic photographer or writers, and with a couple of the naturalists. So really, I think, wonderful food. You're always offered an option of a fish dish, a meat dish, or a vegetarian dish. When I first started working on the ships, eating vegetarian meant having 2 servings of whatever vegetable they were offering. No longer. I assure you, the chefs put as much attention into the vegetarian offerings as they do into the others. It's marvelously presented. That, incidentally, on the bottom, and on the bottom of this picture as well, Henrik Olberg, our hotel manager, the largest department on the ship, the hotel department, and they are there to look after your every need. That's Pete in the middle on the upper picture, one of our assistant barmen in the bistro bar area. Now, it is always informal. You need not bring, if you were planning to go out and buy a wardrobe of new gowns and perhaps dust off the old tuxedo that you haven't worn since you were married, leave it behind and fill up the space in your suitcase with warm clothing. It's informal. Ties might appear once on a voyage, and it's completely optional then. It's very informal, but very elegant and comfortable. The fitness center. Can you imagine working out on, new up-to-date treadmill or elliptical trainer, looking out that set of windows on Antarctica? We have a massage therapist. We have a sauna, you see in the lower left. We have a fully outfitted fitness center, and believe me, it gets a great deal of use. No excuses for coming back having gained weight. The fitness center is there for your use. So here, looking out, a picture taken about how the heck did the cameraman stand out there to take that picture? Actually, that's Mike Nolan, one of our Lindblad Expedition photo specialists, and he's fastened his camera on the end of a pole and is taking the picture back on the ship. So you see people on the foredeck, they're below the main bridge, up above the bridge, people getting out and just immersing themselves in the joy of life here in Antarctica. So, Elizabeth, is it your turn?
I am here, and I think we were going to talk just a little bit about the extension.
There we go. Let me, I'll get to, yeah, with the itineraries just come up. Let me talk about these.
Oh, great. Yeah, and then I'll jump in after.
Okay. This is our, what we would be our shorter, our itinerary that just goes to the peninsula. But I really want to stress that, it shows us going to Paulette Island and then turning around. Well, if the ice conditions are right, we might go right past Paulette Island, go farther down into the Weddell Sea, going down, looking to see what we can find down there. and it's often very wildlife rich. This is the one, if conditions allow us to get down there, this is an area where we often encounter emperor penguins. An exciting moment, doesn't happen on every trip. If the ice allows it, we will change the itinerary. If conditions call for it, we will change the itinerary. So here is a longer itinerary which would include the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. And I think you've detected the excitement that Kim and I, and I'm sure we're speaking for the rest of the natural history staff, have for the Falklands and South Georgia. If you're only going to come to Antarctica once, what the heck, do it all. So here would be a trip that would leave Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world, go up to the Falkland Islands, over to that wonderful wildlife paradise of South Georgia, then across the Scotia Sea, past Elephant Island, where Shackleton's 22 men waited with Frank Wild for the boss to return and rescue them, and then continue on with our expedition along the Antarctic Peninsula before returning back up across the Drake Passage to Ushuaia, full of memories, full of good thoughts. Also, as long as you're going, we offer some optional extensions. This one, Iguazu Falls, is right where Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay all come together. Iguazu is taller and larger than Niagara, very Niagara-esque, but on a much grander scale. And it's in a much more tropical regions. It is one of the world's incredible sites. The Easter Island, if you, like me, grew up reading Thor Heyerdahl and Kon-Tiki, you've heard about the stone statues or the moai on Easter Island, about 1,000 miles off the coast of Chile. We can offer an extension to Easter Island. It is led there by archaeologists who have been very much involved in the archaeological research on Easter Island, but also in preservation of Easter Island as a World Heritage Site. So that's a 4-day optional extension to Easter Island.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much, because there are quite a lot of options when one is traveling that far down to the ends of the earth. You might as well consider taking some extra days to see some of the other amazing places. So thank you very much. I'm going to come back with, I've got actually, I have more questions than we're going to be able to answer tonight, but I'm going to come back with the Q&A in just a minute. But I just wanted to add one or two notes before we jump into the questions, which is, you know, as Steve and Kim have been describing tonight, there are a lot of activities, and I think one of the pieces that we do like to make sure people, especially first-time travelers with Lindblad, understand is that our expeditions are pretty much fully inclusive. Everything that you do as a part of your expedition, all the accommodations, the transfers, the meals aboard the ship, activities, the Zodiac rides, kayaks, everything that you've heard about tonight is all included as part of the cost of your expedition. And I think for first-time travelers, that often is a very pleasant surprise for them that they might not have realized when they first started planning their trip. But it really is quite complete. And that is a very good value if you are looking to go to Antarctica. The second thing I wanted to just point out is if you are actually considering and starting to make a specific plan for going to Antarctica and you're kind of wondering what are the differences between going with one company versus another company, we actually have a publication that I think it's actually very, very well laid out to give you kind of a schematic about questions that are very important to understand when you are going to a region like Antarctica. So you can go onto our website and you can view this brochure online. It's actually called 6 Questions to Ask Before Choosing Your Travel Company for Antarctica. Obviously, we provided it and we published it, but I do think, you know, as Lindblad Expeditions we wont to do, we do try to really make sure that it points out important information regardless of which company you travel. So it's a pretty fair and balanced review, but it is a tool that's helpful. And you can see it at expeditions.com/Antarctica. And it's viewable online, or you can request the brochure from our website, and we'll be happy to send it to you. So that's our online resources, and I'm going to take the rest of the time to go ahead and cover as many questions as we can this evening. And Steve and Kim, as I suspected, I have got some questions for both of you, so I guess I'll just bounce back and forth. And of course, if you want to swap from what I'm telling you, you can grab any of the questions. But the first one that we did get from quite a few people is, of everything we've described, and for the season of Antarctica. What is the best time of the season to go, and why is that? And of course, somebody wrote it and said, "Please don't say any time." So, Steve, I'll throw it to you. If you and Kim want to do it together, you guys can do that.
Well, I hate it when my answer is taken away by the questioner. You see somewhat different things at different times of the season. Early in the season for Antarctica is going to be November probably, we get a chance to dock the ship in ice and walk out on the sea ice, which is a great experience. Early in the season, the penguins are kind of maybe standing there waiting for the snow to melt, or they're just getting into laying their eggs. We get to see this remarkably humorous behavior of stone stealing, where penguins are looking for rocks. They make their nests out of piles of stones, and the best place to get a stone is from your neighbor's nest. Only while you're getting one from your neighbor's nest, somebody else is getting one from yours. So we see that. We'll see birds incubating. Later on, maybe December, we see the small young penguins in the nest. Along about January, the penguins are getting big. They no longer fit under their parents. They're gathered up into groups we call creches, and allowing both adults to go away and feed. And then you see the very humorous behavior of the food chase when an adult comes back and every single chick in the group tries to convince the adult that they really are the ones deserving to be fed. So you see different things at different times of the season. There's no one part of the season where you can see it all, but there's always something to be seen.
Great.
I agree with Steve on that. Elizabeth, I would say almost to generalize from that, if it's landscape ice that you're interested in, go for November, December. If it's wildlife and their most outrageous behavior, go for when the penguins are hatched, December, January, February. So if I could only take my dear mother, one time I'd probably maybe aim for right around December. But ice, landscapes, early season, penguin behavior, that sort of thing, later season.
Great. All right. Very nice, specific answer. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, I'm going to actually pass one along to you, Kim, because we do have some questions that are specifically about the photo program. And the first one is, what level of expertise is necessary to participate in the photo walks and other photo activities?
Okay, we address all levels of photography. So the first thing we do is on the ship, before we arrive in Antarctica, we break all people interested in photography. We break out into separate groups in the lounge. And those groups might be 4 different groups, one for Canon cameras, one for Nikon cameras and other models, one for basic point and shoot, we call them aim and create cameras, and one for people shooting video. And each of those groups has a specific National Geographic or Lindblad photo instructor. And we address everybody in that group at all levels. And we immediately start to target you out and find out where you are. And everybody gets one-on-one time. So we address all levels. I know that sounds like a generic, simple answer, but we aim to leave nobody behind. So my answer to that question is all levels, from the very top experts. I mean, we have, Ralph Lee Hopkins and Mike Nolan, brilliant photographers with Lindblad on board, and Michael Medford and Flip Nicklin, some of the best photographers in the world with National Geographic on board, for the experts, and then all the way down to people that are just putting a camera in their hands for the first time and want Antarctica to be their initiation. That's just as fun and rewarding.
Okay, great.
Could I add one thing to that?
Of course.
Whatever level you are, please bring your camera manual. That'll make it a lot easier for the photography team to assist you with your camera issues.
Oh, that's a great addition, actually. I lived and learned that myself when I traveled, so that is a very good point. Now, Steve, there's another question here. You talked about the Drake Passage, and the general question we have, and we do get this for most of our webinars, but what is the weather really like, and are there many storms in the area, not necessarily when you're on the Drake Passage, but while you are down there? So can you address that? That usually goes along with the seasickness question as well.
Yeah.
So I'll leave those with you.
Sure I can. The weather, we're not in the really, really bitter cold, bitter windy part of Antarctica. I would say commonly daytime temperatures are in the range of 35 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. But your comfort level is set by the wind, which leads us logically into the clothing issue. We strongly recommend, first of all, the question we always get asked, do you need your boots? Yes, you need your boots. Absolutely need your boots. As Kim indicated, you'll step off of the Zodiac into maybe ankle-deep water to walk ashore. So you'll wear your boots every time you go ashore. You'll learn to love your boots, and for that reason I encourage you to look carefully and get good boots. You want waterproof clothing, outer gear, waterproof trousers. We will provide the parka, and you will take it home with you. That's yours to keep. You want gloves. I recommend waterproof gloves. You want a hat. You want to dress in layers, and you'll be completely and perfectly comfortable. It's an old cliche. There's no bad weather. There's just bad clothing. And if you prepare yourself adequately, you can expect temperatures in the 35 to 45 degree range, and you can be quite comfortable under those circumstances if you are well dressed.
Okay. Steve, thank you very much. And Kim, thank you as well. You guys had a great team presentation, so thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're running actually right to the end of our presentation, so I wanted to go ahead and wrap up. And apologies, as always, when we do not have time to answer all of the questions, please know that our expedition specialists are always available for answering any of your questions at 1-800-EXPEDITION. And you can find a lot of the information and answers on our website at expeditions.com. So thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. We really appreciate you spending some time to hear about traveling to Antarctica with Lindblad National Geographic. And for any questions, please contact us. And don't forget, if you book by June 30th, we've got a special offer for the November 27th departure for this year. So again, thank you very, very much, and we look forward to having you join us for webinars in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.